communication from the heart. Daniel Beaver was an old man, an elder of our tribe, yet I don't think he ever went beyond a 50-mile radius from his home during his entire lifetime. By the time I was 24, I traveled all over the country. I had studied psychology, sociology, cultural anthropology, and theology. I thought I knew a lot of things, but he was still teaching me. One of these days, you're going to have to talk to a banker, a white man who has control of money. Maybe you're going to have to borrow money. In our culture, we don't always look a person in the eye when we speak to them. It's kind of a respect in our way to look either to the side or down. But he said, here, when you talk to him, he's going to be looking at you. And with that eye contact, he's going to be studying you. He'll most likely have gray or cold blue eyes. His face will look like a map with little blue lines. And when he's upset, it turns red. And all those little maps come in the forefront like neon signs all over his face. When you watch his neck and the veins there, one will stand out, almost ready to burst. There'll be a lot of tension. He's going to decide whether or not he can trust you with someone else's money. So his neck will be tight, and as it tightens up, his eyes will grow colder. He'll be very businesslike, but he'll be looking you over while you're talking. First, he's going to look down at your shoes to see if you walk a lot. Are they scuffed? Are they shined? Are your heels run down? Don't you have a car? Is it worth the gamble to loan this kind of person any amount of money when he can't even handle his shoes? Then he'll look at your clothes. Are they clean? Have your trousers been slept in, or are they pressed? He'll look at your fingernails. How well do you take care of yourself? He'll look from bottom on up while you're talking to him about why you need the money. He'll be listening, but he's more or less sizing you up. Then he'll begin to look at your eyes again. In the course of that conversation you have with the banker, he may even upset you. If he does, never raise your voice. If you have to answer, just keep it low-key and keep on talking to him. There's a kind of lend me money chant that you can say under your breath, and this is how you must talk with that person. Say in your mind that you will communicate from your inner being to the innermost being of that cold outer shell. Somewhere there is a heart. It may be small, but you will have touched it. And then when you talk, look him straight in the eye. Don't look down, don't slouch. Sit erect. You're a man. You're not begging. You're representing a cause. You have good reason for wanting to borrow that money. So you look him straight in the eye when you talk to him. When you've got his full attention, that's when you breathe this chant. Then you talk some more about anything at all, but he's going to lend you money. All of a sudden, he'll say, okay, and you walk out of that bank with it, but you pay it back. If you don't, whether anyone else knows about it or not, you're going to know, and it will affect you. Perhaps the next time you try to help someone, you'll forget your songs. Like I said, Daniel had never been out in society, yet somehow he had practical insight into human behavior. What I had learned from psychology books was the same thing that he taught me. A few years later, when I worked in a fundraiser for Oconee College in Oklahoma, I was invited to speak as third vice president of a major corporation. I got there in scheduled time and began to think maybe he was an Indian. You get there at the appointed time and you have to wait and wait. That's what I did. I waited and waited. Someone called me into another room, and I waited some more in there. Then his personal secretary came in. "Mr. Sack will see you now. You will have approximately 8 minutes. I'm kind of on to the psychological stuff. Before you get to the carpet path, there's that tile floor that's supposed to make you self-conscious because it's so noisy as you walk on it, like going to your dorm. And once you get there, the desk is wise to say, 'I'm important. You can't get close to me over here. You're nobody. You keep yourself over there.' That's what that desk is about." But it didn't matter. He was still a human being, and those words kept ringing in my head. What this old man had taught me way back in Oklahoma, way back in the sticks, about insight. He had a check already written out because he was a busy man. "Let's get this out of the way," type. Since it was a wide desk, I couldn't reach him. He tossed a check. "I suppose this is what you want." He fluttered around and finally landed, but I didn't really look at the amount. I looked straight at him and said, "Mr. Sack, I know you're a busy man and have many things to do. I appreciate the time you've taken, even to ask me to come in. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so before I leave, I'll return this check to you." "Why?" I never raised my voice. The old man had told me not to. "When you tossed that check over to me, you placed me in the position of a beggar. But I'm representing a cause, and I believe in that cause very much. I don't want to put this institution in the same position that you placed me, so I'll return it. But you have my thanks anyway." "Well, where is the school?" Instead of 8 minutes, I was there quite a while, and he got a lesson on Indian education. It was the difference between $25 and $2,500. Just by looking him in the eye and not ever raising my voice, I didn't even have to use the "lend me money" chant. Insight. My teachers learned it, not through the university, but by communicating. That's how they came to understand life, behavior, response to stimuli. In our society today, we live in what some people call a new age. It makes me smile many times because the things that they do are not new. When our own people treated a patient, if someone was wrong on one side of the body, they treated the opposite side. They received this knowledge from above. Today, scientists know that the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body and vice versa. But how did our elders know that? They never went to medical school or studied anatomy. The insight came from communication. The environment was our starting point in learning as much as we could from what was around us. The seasons, the things that grow, the animals, the birds, various other life forms. When we would begin the long process of trying to learn about that which is within ourselves, we didn't have any textbooks. We didn't have any great psychiatrists who lived years ago and presented theories in this and that. We had to rely on something else, and that was our senses. Rather than through scientific investigation, we sense those things within and around us. Methuselah. Our people learned to predict by observing the environment. They could read things in the rocks. What does the moss on a rock have to tell us? Moss usually grows on the north side, the direction the wind comes from. If the moss is covering most of the north side of the rock or tree, you're going to have a hard winter. The south side will never have as much moss as the north side unless there's going to be a significant change in the weather, such as might be caused by a shift in the Earth's orbit. Our Indian people didn't know about the orbit of the Earth, but they knew that something could shift, causing tornadoes to be where they weren't heard of before. Those are some of the clues that helped our people know what kind of preparation to make before winter came. Our old people used to refer to the north as the direction that causes our larder to go empty, meaning that it was always possible that what they had hunted and put in storage might not be sufficient. If the winter was very harsh, they could run out of food. Observation of the land itself, the sky, and how the wind was shifting were all clues as to what kind of weather was brewing. We became so sensitive to the outdoors that we could almost smell rain or snow coming before the sky turned cloudy. It's a matter of becoming sensitive to the environment, and you don't become sensitive to it by reading the business section every day over a cup of coffee or watching your favorite TV program. Today, pollution also interferes with the ability to sense the weather changes. You turn on the news and the weatherman tells you what's going to take place. A lot of time, the weather, in spite of all of their instruments, doesn't follow their prediction. Some of our people could look into the stars and read them like a book. I never did know how they did it, but they made predictions from the stars and moon just as they did from looking on nature. There was an old man I knew from my childhood. He was an old man when I first knew him, and he was an old man while I was growing up, and he was still an old man after I became an adult. I have no idea how old he was, but I called him Methuselah. When I was about 12 years old, I went over to his house, and I found him looking up into the night sky. So I asked, "What are you looking at?" "See those stripes up there?" I didn't see any stripes, but I lied and said yes. Then, when I looked hard enough, I saw them, so had made an honest boy out of me. By the time you get of age, you're going to be wearing the uniform of our country because there's going to be a great war. I forgot about it until cold winter night when, trying to huddle up as best I could in the foxhole, those words came back to me. "You'll wear the uniform of our country." It came true. He read in the stars years before that I would be involved in some way. He saw what looked like flag stripes in the sky, and they were pointed at one another, indicating a war. People like Methuselah didn't pass themselves off as great psychics. They simply looked upon themselves as being sensitive to the things around them, without some fancy label attached to it. When the film Dances with Wolves came out, someone asked me, "That was supposed to be authentic all the way through. What did you think?" I replied, "It was very authentic, with one exception. In the movie, Dunbar had to ride like hell to let the Indians know that the buffalo were coming. In fact, each tribe had a buffalo man who was responsible for locating buffalo. Even if the buffalo were 100 miles away from their camp, the buffalo man would have known where they were." Most tribes had seers like Methuselah who could foretell future events. Their intuition was highly developed, or as Native Americans like to say, they were sensitive. Some had fasted to be able to sense the presence of a particular animal spirit. The one who dealt with buffalo almost had to have that specialty because buffalo were the staple of the entire tribe and very important. The buffalo man became in tune with the buffalo so that he knew how far away they were and in which direction. If the buffalo were real close, the tribe would have known it already and not have to been awakened in the middle of the night and told the buffalo are here. It makes good drama, but they would have already known. Many Navajos were employed to lay rails for the old railroads. There's a story about a group of Navajos being told to lay rails on a curve, but they refused to do it. When the foreman asked why, they answered, "The train will turn over and hurt a lot of people. It says right here on the plans to lay it this way. It will be safe." They argued, but the Indians still wouldn't work. Finally, the chief engineer was called in and looked at the plans. "Fellows, they're right. I made a mistake." So that was their intuition and powers of observation at work. They were not engineers, but they knew the weight and speed at which a train in a sharp turn would have caused a wreck. To teach our young people how to get in touch with this nature and their own intuition, our elders used to take them way out in the woods, blindfolded, and have them sit by a particular tree. You stay here blindfolded until we come after you. Be with the tree, touch it, hug it, lean against it, stand by it, learn something from it. After half a day or more, they would bring them back to camp, remove the blindfold, and say, "Go find your tree." After touching a lot of trees, they could find the one that they had spent time with. Sometimes they didn't have to touch a lot of trees. Those with highly developed intuition could go right to their tree. They seemed to be drawn to it. That's how we begin to connect. It's amazing what you feel from a tree. It can give us energy. When we take long hikes in wooded areas, we often put our fingertips on the ends of the cedar or pine needles. Just standing there touching them, you're going to feel energy come to you. Trees are emitting energy all the time. Every needle of the tree, every leaf is trying to make the atmosphere breathable for us. That's why my people have great respect for trees. The trees are our relatives. We call them tall, standing brothers. I will walk again. After 14 years, there came a day when I finally got through with my training. When Daniel had given me all the instructions he could, he said, "Siobhan, I have tried my very best to recall all that I have learned in life and share it with you. You're ready to go on your own now." Although I had permission to use the medicine at any time, I felt that as long as Daniel Beaver and Dave Lewis were alive, I didn't want to use it because people came to them for help, and the donations they received were all they had to live on. It was known that I was studying with them, and people would come to me for help, but I would tell them, "Well, my teachers are still living. I would appreciate if you would ask one of them." By that time, I was 32 years old and had a job with Indian Affairs Commission, working for all the tribes in the state of Oklahoma, so I didn't have to rely on the medicine ways to make a living. It went on like that until they finally realized what I was doing. They came to me separately, but both had essentially the same thing to say. "You should be using the songs and chants I gave you. That way, if you have any questions while I'm still around, you can come to me and talk it over. So it's all right if people come to you and ask for help. Go ahead and help them." Reluctantly, I began to use the medicine ways. I didn't advertise because we don't operate like that. We don't even tell anyone that we know those things. The people in our tribe, by looking at us, can sense that there's something special about us, by the way we wear a certain feather, by the way we conduct ourselves. They know that we carry medicine. I remember my last conversation with Daniel Beaver after he told me he had done his best and was turning everything over to me. He sat with his eyes closed for quite a while, and just as I started to wonder if he had gone to sleep or into a diabetic coma, he opened his eyes and softly said, "Siobhan, I'm very happy that I'm going to walk again." I didn't know what he meant, and I thought, is he talking about the time when he crosses over? That in some way he'll be intact and he can physically walk again? I didn't understand at that time, but I embraced him and I shook his hand with every intention of communing to come back and tell him about my experience. Not to enhance myself as knowing something, but to show that what he had imparted was continuing. "Well, you taught me. I tried it that way, and they're getting along all right now." But he died a few weeks later, and I never got a chance to tell him. Not too long after his death, I was called upon to help someone, and it required medicine that had to be fixed after midnight. Some of those songs are meant to be sung only at certain times of day, and so I waited until after midnight to to sing over a big bucket filled with water and herbs. This was a very long song, covering many facets of healing, because the ailment was quite severe. And after singing each stanza of the song, I had to blow 4 times into the water with a blowpipe. I had just got through singing the chant and was ready to blow into that water when I heard Daniel right behind me. He had a distinctive way of clearing his throat. Then it came to me, yes, he's walking again. This is what he means. Every time I take that medicine out and use it, he's walking again, because that medicine, helping people, was his whole life. That's why I'm very happy that other people are being helped, and I have a part in it. I'm walking this path, and he's walking through me in the preservations of what has been entrusted into my care. I'm representing my teachers in the medicine ways of my people. And in turn, now I can sit on the side and watch the fruits of my labor, what I have invested in those I've taught. They're carrying on now while I'm still living here and can be a recipient of the love and the prayers that they make for me. Those are some of the things that give me encouragement to keep going on regardless of how tired I get or the obstacles I may face.